Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts project at thunderbolts.info. Solar physicists are wrestling with a new mystery. Why is the sun so perfectly round? Centrifugal forces in a rotating ball of gas should make the sun wider at its equator than along its axis. But scientists working with the Solar Dynamics Observatory have obtained what they call the most accurate measurement of the sun's shape. What they have found is that the sun is far too perfectly round, forcing solar physicists to rethink their assumptions about the sun.
They found that the sun is actually much closer to a perfectly round circle than they had expected, based on their theory. Now, their theory has certain assumptions and certain models that they use to determine whether or not the rotation of the sun is going to make it squash down and get a little bit wider through the equator, much like the Earth does. But as it turns out, despite the rotation of the sun, which is a complex thing in itself, faster at the equator than at the poles, the sun is not flattening out nearly as much as their theory expected. So when there's something that goes wrong with the basics of your theory, that usually requires a little introspection and anything ranging from tweaking to trying to redo the whole thing from scratch.
This discovery joins a long string of surprises for solar physicists. Is it possible that our fundamental theories about the sun, ideas that have guided astronomers for decades, need to be reconsidered?
Most of the observations of the sun have not fit theory. This is a textbook case of falsification, and you make deductions from your theory and come up with circumstances that you should find. You go out and look for those circumstances, and when you don't find them, your theory is falsified. It seems to me we need to examine Eddington's assumption back in the 20s that the sun is internally powered. He adopted that assumption because he couldn't think of any mechanism for an external power. Now we know that the universe is composed of plasma, and from laboratory experiments we know plasma is electrically active. So that revitalizes revisiting the assumption, is the sun powered externally?
A sun powered by external electrical input could answer many puzzles of solar behavior, from the missing solar convection to temperature anomalies, to acceleration of the solar wind, and many more. Since gravity is insufficient to overcome centrifugal forces on the sun, the ability of electromagnetic forces to confine plasma must now be explored to explain the sun's roundness.
The sun and almost everything we see in the universe is ionized, and it's in a state that's called plasma, the fourth state of matter that is not discussed very widely. Because it's in an ionized state, which means that electrons are stripped off the atoms, and it becomes a lot more susceptible to electromagnetic forces. Usually astronomers think primarily of gravity and collision type forces as the root causes of everything that goes on, but electromagnetic forces are actually much stronger, or can be much stronger under the right circumstances, than the force of gravity. But to incorporate the forces of electromagnetism and electric currents and very chaotic magnetic fields which change over time into their model is a very difficult thing to do. In fact, the numerical simulations of plasmas are almost intractable, which means unsolvable, because they get so complex and so chaotic so quickly. As the size goes up, the scale of it goes up and everything.
There's reputations and salaries at stake on this. So there's a strong incentive to patch the theory rather than examine assumptions. There's also the cost of if you adopted a new theory, you would have to rewrite the books and change curriculums and reprogram computers. So there's a good reason for not adopting a new theory. However, that's expediency. It's not science. And lately we've been, it seems like expediency has taken over science. We're in a dark age of science.
For continuous updates on space news from the Electric Universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info.